couple of very straightforward but effective mods on this Fender Player 2 Strat recently. I just want to talk about them and show you guys some of the sounds, and also maybe talk about why we love modding Strat so much, because they are such a great platform for just kind of taking a guitar and sweetening it to your taste. It's a little bit like coffee, right? Everybody has their own little coffee routine. If you make coffee at home, you've probably got a preferred way of making it. Maybe a couple of funny little steps that you do in there just because you found that it works for you. And then, you pass it to somebody else and they go, oh my God, why would you do this? Why do you think this tastes good? Well, that's exactly what Strats are like to me. The idea that you can take something that has such a universally recognized form, but then within that form, basically turn it into a totally different instrument. So I think the Player 2s come out of the box really, really solid. And this one I took out of the box when I got it. There's a demo video linked in the video description if you want to see my initial thoughts, impressions, and tones. But having so many Strats in my life means that there's certain things that I kind of gravitate towards, and especially having a 2-point floating bridge on here, which I've set this up just for a subtle amount of float. I can give it a bit of a shimmer, David Gilmour style on there when I want to do that. One thing that I did want to do was get some locking tuners for it. So I got these Geiger locking tuners on here, which have the little buttons on the back. And, always read the product description, kids, when you order something, because they do make a direct replacement for the type of machine heads that are on here, which basically don't have the little screws on there. I didn't read that properly, and I ordered the ones with screws. So I had to drill a bunch of holes into the back of this headstock. It's kind of like a rite of passage for me, getting a guitar, going, I want to do some mods, and ordering the wrong part. So I did that. The locking tuners, they're very affordable compared to a lot of other options on there. So far, they've been really solid. I found sometimes with like cheaper parts on there, you get stuff like wiggle on the main mechanism in there, but no complaints with these. They were pretty cheap. They fit really nicely on there, and from the front you can't tell that the guitar has locking tuners, which I like. The other mod that I did is purely cosmetic, but I ordered a single ply black scratch plate on here just to do the Gilmour thing, right? When I think of a black Strat, I think of a black Strat with a black pickguard. This one came stock with a white pickguard, like a multi-ply white pickguard on there. Fender do a Player 2 modified in the dusk finish, which I've done some videos with, and that's also a fantastic guitar. It's got a Floyd on it, and it comes with their noiseless single coils and basically a push-pull pot, so it's sort of pre-modded on there if you like. But I actually really like the way these stock Player 2 single coils sound. We'll hear a couple of tones on there, but I think if I was going for more of like a fat 60s SRV thing, I would drop some different pickups in there. But I like the way this one kind of jangles, and there's a tone pot on there for a reason. You back it off to 6 or 7 and it generally fattens up the neck pickup nicely. The big mod that I did do though was putting a Bill Lawrence L500. This is an L500L that I got secondhand. I've got an L500 XL in my Hamer Californian, which I really, really like. I actually did a video putting some Lawrences in my white Les Paul Custom, and that really, really made that guitar sound chunky. I ended up taking them out so that I put some EMGs in there for pure Zach action on there, but I figured putting one of them in here. Basically, the motivation on this is the Alex Lifeson Hentor Sportscaster, right? You had an L500 in the bridge on that guitar. I know the Lurkst models that Godin are now making have basically the same style of pickup in there. One of my friends, Eddie, bought one of those guitars and I got to play it recently, and we're just kind of talking about the design of that pickup and how it has such a big impact on the sound. What I was impressed by, as you'll hear, is that this actually balances out pretty well with these single coils on here. I think if I put an L500 XL in here, it would be a little bit too much, but just the standard L500 lead pickup works really nicely in there. I haven't changed out any of the electronics. I haven't really done anything else. I guess one other mod is, the bar that this comes with normally has a little plastic tip. So I took that off. Shock horror, but it's the stock nut. The neck on this feels really nice, the satin finish. This particular one, all the fret ends are really nice. It's got the rolled fingerboard edges on there. I feel that for not too much outlay on here, I was able to take a really solid guitar and turn it into something that I would happily gig and record with, and something I will happily gig and record with. So let's hear a bunch of tones. Earlier, Fender do make a Player 2 modified that comes with noiseless single coil pickups in here, a couple of different finish options, and if you want something like a Floyd, Fender also own Jackson and Charvel, and I think the Charvel, San Dimas, and SoCal models that are also made in Mexico are some of the best bang for buck guitars out there, and I really should grab one to feature on the channel because I feel like if you're into the 80s shredder guitar thing, you can probably just go and buy one of those and use it in its stock format. A lot of them come with Seymour Duncans. A lot of them will come with a really nice Floyd Rose bridge on them if you're into that, or a hardtail. A bunch of them come with locking tuners as well. So I feel like that's also a fantastic way to get that hot-rodded Strat thing going. But for me, I'm slightly more of the persuasion of like, what were people doing in the late 70s and early 80s to modify their Strats? I think of players like David Gilmour, the black pickguard and the white pickups are such an iconic look. Alex Lifeson doing the sportscaster thing with the L500. Who else can I think of off the top of my head that played a bunch of modded Strats? Obviously, then you've got guys like Landau and Lukather and the whole James Tyler, Anderson Guitar Works, Sir universe that you get into that evolved into what we consider like the modern S-type guitar on there. I'm rambling at the moment, but I really like this guitar. It plays really smoothly. I love the Lawrence in the bridge on this. I actually kind of have come around to digging this 2-point trem with the bent steel saddles on there. I normally like the more modern style on there, but I feel like the moral of this story is you don't have to radically overhaul a guitar to get it to do what you want to do slightly more. Again, this is that coffee analogy. Like you're just getting into that zone where maybe it's a little bit more fruity and acidic, or maybe it's a little bit darker and more roasted. And these food analogies are just going to go on. But a bunch of you had asked about what I'd done to this guitar. So that's what I've done to this guitar. Let me know what you've done to your Strats in the comment section below. Are you somebody who might just go in and say, change it to a master tone and a blend? Or someone who puts in like a treble bleed circuit on there, really basic stuff? Or do you rip rip out all the frets, put on jumbo stainless steel, cut the headstock off, put on a different bridge. You just go all in on that. Like, I did think about maybe getting something like a Vega trem. Maybe I will in the future and trying it out on this. But I love these player guitars straight out of the box. I love them as a modding platform on here as well. And I would love to hear your stories about your favorite modded Strat. But for now, more guitar noises.